How hard is it to get here a week before spring ball and to sort of get thrown into the fire?
Well, not nearly as hard as what our women's basketball team's been doing. Shout out to those guys making it to the Final Four, first time ever. I was just told, so that's awesome. A little crazy coming in, having the first practice a few days later, but I've kind of been through this before. I've gotten hired a job where I drove into town the day before spring ball started. Had another one where I showed up in the middle of spring ball, so I'm kind of used to it. I think Coach Bowen did a really good job of taking the install slow so I could make sure I was on top of everything, and we were very thorough in going through it, and I was prepared when we came out. So it's been a good deal.
What is the key to familiarizing yourself with the players and the concepts in such a short amount of time?
I think the biggest key is you got to make sure that you understand the terminology and you can do your teaching progression. You just got to change, make sure you're getting the terminology correct. Everybody's got their own style of teaching. I was able to learn the terminology again because Coach Bowen was very thorough. We went slow with it, so I was on top of things and was able to put it into my teaching style and the way I communicate so the guys could understand it and they could understand what was expected of them.
What is your teaching style? What do you want to preach to these guys?
I preach a lot of coming off the ball vertically. I talk a lot about playing physical, playing tough, playing aggressive. We're always going to try to get double teams wherever we can. So anytime we can do those things, and again, I think these guys want to play that way. I think we've got some really tough, some really aggressive players up front, and I think that's how they like to play.
What was your history with Pry?
Not a lot with him directly.
Okay.
A lot of people who I trust implicitly in my life and my world are very similar with him. He trusts them and believes in them, and the people that we know spoke to both of us about each other, and I think that's kind of where it started. Then finally, when I was able to talk with him and with Coach Bowen, I think there was a lot of connections in, again, the way to attack a defense from an offensive standpoint, the way to build a team, the way to build a program, all the things that they believe in, I believe in also. So I think it was a pretty smooth transition.
Did you ever coach with his dad, or just kind of cross?
No, cross paths a
been?
lot. Yeah,
Okay.
cross paths a lot with his family and with my past. As he put it, we kicked a lot of the same dirt.
Did you reach out about the opening, or did he reach out to you?
I reached out initially to a friend of mine who reached out to him.
And did it seem like a natural fit to come here?
I thought it did, and I think they agreed because it worked out. So.
And your recruiting ties to this area, not only West Virginia but Cincinnati, how much did that help? That from a footprint perspective, you knew where Pry and his staff wanted to recruit?
Yeah, I think that was a big thing for Coach because he talked a lot about that to me, the footprint in recruiting through the state of Ohio, through West Virginia, into Pennsylvania. Even in my past, especially at West Virginia, being down here, some in Virginia, into Tennessee, into a little bit of North Carolina. So I think that played a big part in his mind.
Cade Moore started this transition to center a couple months before you got here. How has he looked so far in the spring?
I think every day he's getting better and more comfortable with it. I tell you, it's a tough thing to snap a football with a 300-pound defensive lineman lined up over top of you when you've never done it before. It's one thing when you've done it every day of your life. When you've never done it, that's a hard thing. So he's gotten better every day so far with snapping the ball, which is the most important part. Once you get past that and you understand who you're IDing on every play and getting the offense started, and as we call it, driving the ship, it's still blocking after that. And we all know he's a pretty good blocker, so I think that part of it's pretty smooth.
Tech didn't have a ton of tackles last year. How do you feel about those guys so far this spring?
I don't think you ever have enough tackles. No, those guys are playing hard. They're understanding everything. I think Parker's had a really good spring so far. Again, Xavier's getting better every rep, not only every day, every rep he's getting better. You can see him understanding things better. He can react to things really well. And Brody's coming along and pushing those guys. And Bob's been bouncing back and forth between tackle and guard. We're trying to find the right combination of guys. So it's a good it's a good competition right now.
I was going to ask you, a lot of O-line coaches like to mix and match in the spring, find the right spots. Are you a big proponent of that? Do you like to move guys around a lot?
Yeah, I think you got to figure out who your best 5 is. It's not always the 5 best players. It's who gels the best together, the 5 that do that. So I think you're always going to move guys around and try to make sure you've got the right thing. A lot of times all you do is confirm that you had the right 5 in there. Other times you find, hey, this guy really fits here, and his style of play or his skill set really helps us in this position or this situation. So I think that's critical.
We're going to talk to Parker here in a little bit. What have you seen out of him so far coming off the season where he was hurt early last year? But
yeah, I've heard that. I think he's starting to get beyond that. I think he's starting to play like a guy who was not injured. He's playing faster and things are slowing down for him again. So I think that's a big positive. He's playing with strength and power, and we all know he's got a lot of length to him. So I think when you have that combination, it's a pretty cool thing.
How you moved Hanson over to the right side? Is that a move just because Braylon Moore has been playing really well and his ability to get to that second level, or is that something where Jesse moving to the right side is better for this line?
That was kind of done before I got here, but Jesse has moved back and forth. He's played both spots, right guard and left guard. I think that Braylon being able to step in at left guard and feeling more comfortable there, you kind of use your older guy to be a bounce guy because he can react. I'm sure he's taken a lot of reps at right guard as well over his time here. So
I'm sure the answer is you'd like as many as possible. But how many guys do you need to be comfortable with putting in a game?
I think 7 to 8 is the minimum you got to be comfortable with. You have a backup tackle who's a swing guy. You have a backup guard, and you have a guy who can back up your center. Not only just to be a backup, but to push those guys. It's never healthy for anyone to have a spot that they know no one is pushing for. So if you can get 9 to 10, that's a bonus. I think you have to be able to find 8 to really feel good about going through a season.
And typically, what do you like to travel with, just in case something happens?
I've been places where we traveled with 10. I've been places where we traveled with 13. That's not really my answer. I'll fight to get as many of them on the trip as we can.
Just started stepping back again over your career. Who's been most influential in your career and get to where you are now, or earlier on when you were coaching?
Harry Heastand has been the most influential person in my life, outside of my family, not only as coaching, but he's made me a better husband, he's made me a better father, he's made me a better football coach, a better person. There's no doubt in my mind I would not be even probably coaching today if it wasn't for him. Then a lot of other people, everyone I've worked with, the guys at Cincinnati, Mike Denbrock, Bob Nielsen out of South Dakota. Can't thank those guys enough. Tim Murphy worked for him for a long time. All those guys, Dave Shaw, Dana Holgerson, anybody that you work with, you take something with you. Sometimes it can be something really positive. Sometimes it's something that you say, hey, I want to stay away from doing things this way. And but it all helps form who you are every experience you go through.
Was there something about the way Heastand coached that you just like, I like that, I'm going to do that?
When I first met him and started understanding the way he coached things, he taught things in a way that was easily understood. I thought that was critical to me. If I understood it, the players understood it. And I can remember sitting in his office when he was the O-line coach at Cincinnati, and I was coaching at West Liberty, and we had just met, and I remember him saying stuff, and I remember saying to myself, what have I been coaching my guys to do? I'm completely wrong in the stuff I was coaching. So that was the first big learning moment for me when I said, wow, this is the way you do things, and I understand it and it makes sense. If it makes sense to me, it's going to make sense to them.
You played for him, or?
I did not. Okay. I GA'd for him 2 different times.
Okay.
We kind of met. A guy that I played with, Mickey Marotti, was the strength coach of Cincinnati. We went out to see a clinic that he put on, and Coach Heastand was there, and we got together. I've followed him everywhere I could ever since then.
And he just hung him up
He
recently,
did.
right?
He did.
For good, you think, or is he gonna?
I would say probably for good. I don't know. It depends on whether his wife can handle him being at home or not.
Yeah.
It's funny, he retired. Coach Rudolph got that job, and then this happened. So it benefited me tremendously.
Coach Pry mentioned like
Last one,
there were
yeah.
some East Stroudsburg guys who he coached with that knew you.
Yeah.
Who were some of those guys?
Mike Terwilliger is a guy I've known for a really long time. He's been the offensive coordinator at East Stroudsburg for, 20-some years, 30 years maybe. He's a great football coach. Their offensive line coach as well, Mike Santella. They kind of watched Coach Pry grow up. He was, they worked with his dad for 11 years. Coach Terwilliger did. And, Coach Pry was young, and they watched him grow up. So, they trust him. And I'll never forget the day he called me and said, because Coach Pry and I didn't know each other, so we were trying to find out as much as we could about each other. And he just said to me, he said, Crookie, he's family. And when that guy says a guy's family, I know I trust him and believe in him.